In this video, we're going to take a look at how to develop a smooth and flowing legato technique. One of the most common remarks I hear about my playing from either people who watch these videos here on YouTube or see me at a show, they often comment about how smooth and flowing my legato technique is. So in this video, we're going to take a look at things to watch for and pay attention to when you're practicing in order to develop that technique. Let's check it out. So one of the first things that I would pay attention to in developing your legato technique is listen to how the notes connect from one to another. So if we took something simple like this, I'm really listening. I'm using my ears just as much as my fingers to make sure that the notes are not, to make sure that the notes don't have a space in between them, an audible, like pause. So you might have to establish this with one note at a time. So whether I'm doing hammers, I'm listening to how the notes connect. Now if you were to move around a little bit and play something a little more musical, I'm really listening the entire time, whether I speed up or slow down or anything. I really want the notes to connect seamlessly. So that's the first thing that I would pay attention to. The next thing is listen for an evenness in volume. Now this is easy to do when you have, let's say, less gain on the amp. Maybe just turn your volume down on the guitar a little bit, it cleans it up. Or outright use a clean tone and listen again for the notes to be equal in volume. Now, that doesn't mean that your notes always have to be equal in volume when you play. You may want a little bit of dynamics there. You may want some notes to come roaring out and some to be a little more on the mellow side. That's okay. I want you to be able to do that because that's what you want, not because that's, not because you have no choice, right? So what we're trying to do is establish control. Can we control the volume of our notes to be exactly the same? Because if we can, then we have the option of letting some be a little quieter if we need to. So establishing control of that is another thing that you really want to pay attention to in the beginning and throughout your legato practice. Thirdly, I would bring up what most people think I would have said at the beginning, and that is a light touch. I put that third on the list because you're going to establish that more as you go. You're going to pay attention to that throughout everything else. Some people who strive for a light touch before the other elements that we talked about end up with something missing along the way. So I would say a light touch is definitely something you want to strive for, and that you just have to pay attention to how things feel. Really try to work on your legato where you don't actually press the notes outright, like purposely press them too light. It's not going to sound like much, as you can see. Some notes don't come out at all. Then press just enough until you get notes actually bursting out. So for there, what I'm doing is I'm pressing lighter than I know I need to. And it sounds like ghosts of a note. Doesn't sound very good, to be honest with you. And then just start adding a little at a time. Pay attention to what your thumb feels as well, because you don't want your thumb to clamp and add extra tension. We're really looking for a very light touch without sacrificing, eventually without sacrificing the quality of the notes. Now, ingraining that into your muscle memory and into your technique in a permanent way, that comes from constantly paying attention to it until your muscle memory recognizes it as part of the data that it's trying to package up for you, okay? So we have the strong note connection, right? Connecting the notes smoothly from one to another without a gap. We have the even volume, that you want to strive for as well. That's going to help gain control of everything, and then a light touch along with that. Now, you can do this with any legato example you're currently working on, whether it's part of a solo or an exercise. It doesn't matter if it's hammers and pulls, if it's tapping included. All these things fall under the legato umbrella. So you can use any of the material you like. There are a couple more things, though, that I would add to your list of considerations when talking about improving your legato. And the first thing I would say is really try to stay as relaxed as you can. Now, I know that goes along with the light touch aspect, but what I'm referring to here is as you speed up, the tendency for a lot of players is to press harder, like to make up for the fact that they're going into the no control zone a little bit. They overcompensate by pressing a little harder or pulling a little harder. And when you go into the higher tempos, you may only be able to do it for little bits at a time, right? So you might only go. Now, I'm not going to go so far into it that I lose control over the aspects we're talking about, but I am gonna lean into the tempo a little bit. So what I'm playing slow is. And then as I get comfortable, I'll add more of the lick and kind of add that to the previous part. So there. I extended it by a few more notes. Okay, so that's the basic idea there. When you're playing at the higher tempos, you still want to make sure you're not muscling your way through it, because it's not going to help your legato. It's not going to be, let's put it this way, you're not going to gain anything by doing that. So lean into the higher tempos when you're ready, but make sure that you're not leaning into it in a muscular sort of way. Make sure you're still laying back and continuing to have the light touch. The last thing I would say about this is your smoothness and speed, even when it comes to legato, that is going to improve as you get better. Now that sounds pretty obvious, but one thing you want to add to, another factor that you want to add to your practice is endurance. You want to play at a tempo, let's say a comfortable tempo, but go for length of time as well. Take it until you fail. Take it to a point where you can't do it anymore without it falling apart while staying relaxed. It's a complex combination of things, but that's what you want to aim for at some point along the way. And the longer that you're able to maintain your relaxation, guess what? That smoothness is going to be a natural byproduct of that. Because if you can do this, let's say for 2 minutes, you can probably do this for 10 seconds, right? So that smoothness, that speed and smooth execution, I'm not always pushing for the speed. Sometimes what I'm doing is I'm pushing for how long I can play something while I'm in control. So notice how many times I've said control in this video. Be a control freak. It'll help. The what that you practice doesn't matter as the how. So take this and let me know how you make out with it in the comments. Have a good one.